Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Leading with Grace. Okay, I'm so excited to introduce you to this particular guest, but I did need to give you a little bit of context. So I'm part of, well, actually, we're both part of a Facebook group of coaches, and we've all certified at the Life Coach School. And this particular coach, her name is Jordana Thiessen. She put out a request to be coached on something, and I was like, okay, I could totally do that. And I think you said you were LDS, or I couldn't remember exactly, but I was like, oh, that's totally up in my wheelhouse. I'm like, because I do divorce and discipleship, but with an emphasis on discipleship and spiritual work. And so I reached out to her, and surprisingly, she booked with me. I was like so shocked and honored. But anyway, what was so amazing was like once we started talking, and we're both members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I love her niche. Before I started coaching her, I kind of got to know a little bit about her niche and just felt such a connection to her niche because we all have this mind drama that we're going to be talking about. And especially for women going through separation and divorce, like the mind drama can be up tenfold. And I really felt just a confirmation that her message, her way of coaching is something that is going to help so many of you. And so, with that being said, I want to introduce you to Jordana Thiessen, who lives in, and I'm going to say this wrong, Saskatchewan, something
Saskatchewan.
in Canada. Yes, my first Canadian. Yes. So, Jordana, do you want to tell my people all about you and why you're so amazing?
Absolutely. I'm the youngest child, and so I am my favorite subject.
Yes.
I'll just own it. I'll just own it. Yeah, okay. So I grew up in Alberta, which is easier to say. And now I live in Saskatchewan. And so in Canada, we have provinces instead of states. And so I'm that province over now next to Alberta. And we came out here for my husband's work. But really, it was because Heavenly Father told us to come here, and that's why
Oh,
we are here. But I it's good. We don't have time changes. I like it. Anyways, I got into life coaching though because I have four children and I have one particular son who is my challenging son. And I was ready to, okay, bedtimes were a 2 hour fight every single night. And they were
oh
screaming
my
and yelling and
goodness.
crying,
Oh,
not just from him, right?
stop it.
Not
Oh
just
my
him.
gosh.
And so I was ready. I'm like, he needs to go somewhere. I'm ready for him to get a diagnosis, get medication, which I think he probably would benefit from. Oh, but I also knew I don't like how I'm parenting right now.
Mm,
And I know that that is influencing him. And so I found a coach, and she was specializing in parenting or like parenting coaching, right? Coaches for
yeah.
parents.
Yeah.
And after just 3 sessions, like a noticeable difference was
Wow.
happening in in my home, in my life, and in myself. And so that was really how I really got introduced into coaching. And I was playing around with the idea of becoming certified and being a coach. And then finally I decided to do it. And my husband is
Wow.
really supportive. And that was just really great. And, of all of the things, one of the thoughts that came to mind was what if something happens where I have to support my family? Wouldn't it just be so much less stressful
Yeah.
if I already have that ability?
Yeah.
And
I
so,
love that.
yeah. And then it was okay, what do I want to coach on? And I was like, well, I love the gospel. It's the most important thing to me. And I'm always making connections with anything in life to the gospel. And so then finally decided I want to help women in the church stop using the gospel against themselves.
Mm, I love
And
that.
then
What
where
does
all
that
my
mean? Like,
oh, that means
because you're talking
oh
about things like prayer and
yeah.
faith and
Okay, let me
repentance.
let me give you an
So,
example.
yeah.
Um, who here has heard of church schools like BYU or BYU Idaho or gone to something like Time Out for Women, right? Where things where you pay money and you're being spiritually uplifted and taught. Okay, but in the scriptures, it says that when you're teaching the gospel for money, it's priestcraft. Guess what I was doing? I felt this desire to help women in the church but I was telling myself, I'm selling the gospel. This is priestcraft. This is
Mm,
not okay. And so
yeah.
that was what I put the call out for help with coaching on, where I then met you. And because I knew that that wasn't true, I
Yeah.
knew that I wasn't selling the gospel for money, but I was warping these scriptures to tell me that I was.
Wow. Okay, that is a beautiful personal story about how utilizing the scriptures as a tool against yourself.
Yes. And I think we
Okay.
all do it so, so often.
Wow. And so how do you unpack that? Because like let's say for instance, okay, and I remember this. I was in Sunday school. And this is not just women, but like men too, and sometimes kids. I was in Sunday school and I don't even know what we were talking about, but the teacher says something to the effect of how, we do things wrong. We're not perfect. We're not meant to be perfect. Um, but but I can tell from his demeanor and how he's speaking that when he said the word justice or mercy, there was like a negative connotation there. There was, and I can see it and feel that he was like using this element of justice as almost like a whip, and and so how do you unpack when someone is utilizing a beautiful principle like justice
Mm-hmm.
as a weapon to demean themselves?
Yeah. I like to talk about how we can know something and even believe something, especially in the gospel, right? Where we're taught this, we understand this principle and we understand it intellectually, but in
Yeah.
our hearts, it's a totally different story. And so I think what I've found for me and for people that I've worked with is we have to be willing to dive into our hearts, be honest with ourselves about what we're really believing. And
Mm,
it can be saying it out loud, it can be writing it down. Like it takes courage to say out loud or to physically write down what you're really believing, especially when you know that it's contrary to gospel teachings.
now, why do you have them do that? Why do you have them step into that space of honesty?
Yeah, I do it because it's if you want to clean something up, you need to know what's in there. And so if it's your heart and your beliefs that you're having in your heart, you need to know what's in there. Otherwise, you can't do anything about it. You can't change a light bulb that you don't know is burnt. Isn't let me sometimes I struggle with words. You can't change a light bulb that is burnt out if you don't know it's burnt out. You can't address these false beliefs if you don't know that you have them or if you don't acknowledge that you have them. Because maybe you do kind of know that you have that belief,
Yeah.
but you're ashamed
Yeah.
of it or
Yeah.
you're embarrassed.
So what are some of those beliefs that your clients have come to you with that you've helped them to unpack?
Yeah, I think if there was like a general one, I think I see a lot of perfectionism. This this belief that I know that Christ came and he atoned for the sins of everyone, but I'm the exception. Even though I
Mm,
know that's not true, I know it intellectually, but in my
yeah.
heart, I believe that I'm the exception.
And why are they believing that? Like, because I truly believe that there's like an underlying belief, like
Mm-hmm.
underlying belief current that
Mm.
perpetuates that belief that, yeah, the atonement of Jesus Christ is good for you and you and you and you, not for me in this case. Like,
Right.
what is that underlying belief that you think is there?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I can speak kind of for myself that it's this idea of not being good enough. Like whatever I offer is never good enough. Or like because I know this, there's a higher expectation of behavior from me, right? Like because I know that the church is true, I should just never make these wrong choices.
Mhm.
But if I don't know that the church is true, then like I'm excused. Like it's understandable why I would make these wrong choices. And so it's
Yeah,
this idea that because I know, I have to do.
yeah. And isn't that interesting? You use the word expectation. Like, um, And I think that goes synonymous with perfectionism, right? I feel like there's this connection, right?
Yes.
And so what are the expectations that we may consciously or unconsciously have as members of the Church of Jesus Christ and as believers of Christ?
Hmm. Um, okay. The song Choose the Right. I've realized I have kind of a love-hate relationship with that song now.
Tell us all about it. I want to
Because
hear it.
okay, because it's good, right? Choose the right. And there's all of these blessings for choosing the right. But like there's a right and a wrong to every question. Okay, maybe that's true. It's probably true. I should okay, here I go. I'm like totally judging myself. Like I shouldn't question this. but
I love this.
but I do because and I wrote this down so I could kind of figure it out a little bit more for myself.
Yeah.
But not only is there a right and a wrong to every question, like I can get behind that for a lot of things, but it's when there's a right or a right or a right or a right.
Mm,
Like there's always the most right choice. And so then you just like get worried, right? Is fear. So I think perfectionism and fear are like married to each other, right? And
yeah.
so I need to make the most right choice because if I don't, it's a wrong choice. And so there's not that safety and spirit in righteous doing when you make the wrong choice. So not only does it have to be a right choice, it has to be the most right choice.
Yeah. And you know what came up for me as you were like describing that um is that and this is maybe just also from just from personal experience is that when I am not thinking about myself versus in other words when I'm thinking about another person and their circumstance, you know, then I'm thinking that whatever choice they made is right. You know, like that's this is how they did it and then this is the result that they got
Mm-hmm.
by doing this right choice. So that must be the right way. But then there's something in me that's pushing me to do something different. And so I almost wonder if this perpetuating of what's the right, when you have like right, 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 it's like we look outside of ourselves for the answers versus looking within ourselves and partnering with Christ to find what is what is right for us,
Mm-hmm.
you know, versus like thinking of it as all these different levels of rightness. I don't know if any of that made sense or if you see
It
that.
makes sense to me, right? Because that's what I do. I think when we have these really righteous desires, Satan knows that he can't just come make us like go kill someone, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
going to happen. But he can take these truths that we love and cherish and he just inserts that fear and that perfectionism in there, right? Like, well, if you really love God, he said keep my commandments. And so if you don't keep a commandment perfectly, that means you don't really love him, right? And so like
Oh,
he takes
yeah.
what we love and he just inserts these thoughts and we just choose to believe them. And that's part of being human.
Yeah. Or and another example that came into my mind is if I don't read the scriptures for 1 hour every day, then I must not be a true follower of Christ. I must
Yeah.
not be a believer of the
Mm-hmm.
gospel of Jesus Christ. When those are not they're not related at all. You know, like
Right.
the amount of time you spend studying versus the level of love that you receive or that you give.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I mean, that example just came out for me. And how often do we do that? Like we may hear, you know, Betsy somebody and they spend 2 hours studying and meditating, and that's fine because that works for their schedule, right? But
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of us, we're like, oh crap.
Right.
I'm lucky to do 30 minutes. I'm like, I must be
Or
doing it
like three
wrong,
verses.
right? Yeah, it's like I must be doing it wrong. And so
Yes.
that I bet is like the perpetual thought is like, I'm doing it wrong. And
Yeah.
so how do you get them, how do you begin to help shift them? So you have them like be honest with what they're
Mm-hmm.
really thinking, which is expectations not enough, compare and despair, you know.
Yeah.
What's the next step for them?
Yeah. And so I find that kind of like the next step is just it's almost like just being okay with it. Like this is where I'm at.
Oh, Tell us
And
more
just,
about that because that just seems so counterintuitive. Like I shouldn't be
right.
okay that I think I'm not enough. So
Yeah.
tell me more about that.
Yeah. Um, everything is made worse when we add on that shame to it. So in the life coach school, so you've probably
Oh,
talked about this on your podcast, but how life is 50-50. There is opposition in all things. There are good things, there are bad things.
yeah.
And when we are experiencing or living like the bad things, which maybe it's bad, right? Like I think maybe we put bad on things that don't necessarily deserve it, but things that are. A thing is, this is what I'm believing, and I recognize that it's not true, but this is what I'm believing. If we just accept this is what I'm believing, we aren't making that 50% worse by adding on, and I'm a terrible person for believing this. I really
Mm,
don't understand the gospel for believing this. I must not love God if I'm believing this. Like
mm.
that just makes it worse. So if we can just get to this is where I'm at right now, and that's okay, that automatically feels better.
That's amazing. I remember like coaching a client of mine and she came to this realization where she's like, I'm just mad at my mom. I just want to be really resentful of my mom. And it was something she was like denying herself. Okay.
Mhm.
Because she
Because
kept
you're not
saying,
supposed to.
because I'm not supposed to,
Yeah.
I shouldn't. And so it's like, you know, and finally, when she just finally said it, and I said, you know what? It's a choice to be resentful to your moms. You can go be resentful. And she's like, really? I can? I'm like, yep. And she's like, that is so awesome.
Right. Well,
It
and
was
then when you
the
say it like that,
craziest
like, well, you're already
conversation.
resentful anyways. And so like nothing's changed except that you're not beating yourself up about it.
Yeah, totally. And it was like, so I met with her the following week. I'm like, how did it go? Did you have fun being resentful? She's like, yes, but then I realized it's not something I really wanted to do. And so she
Yes.
was able to like live into that
Yes.
and then realize this is actually not what I want to do.
Okay. And that is the whole purpose for like being okay with being where you're at
Yeah.
because then you're not judging yourself for it. And so it's like, you know how people would put blinders on horses in the old days and like sometimes still do? It's so that they can't see more, right? And so we put these blinders on ourselves and it's the I can't, I shouldn't, I'm not supposed to. Those are the blinders that we put on ourselves. But when we just
Yeah.
are okay with being there, those blinders just naturally come off.
Yeah.
And then we can see more clearly. And so for your client, it was this isn't really what I want to do.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And it's like when I was struggling in my marriage, I couldn't really entertain the word divorce because I shouldn't. I can't. I got married in the temple. Like we
Yeah.
just don't say divorce. Like it doesn't happen in like the marriage vows and thou shalt not ever think about divorce. Like the word doesn't even come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but once I finally like faced the word, and I think I may have actually even written it down.
Yeah. And was it
It's
hard
just
like
it
to
was
say it or to write
hard
it?
at
Yeah.
first, but once I did it, it was as if I felt like a balloon, like all this air came out, but it was like all this pressure was building up and I was
Mm-hmm.
letting the pressure out. And it was like, okay, I can I can give myself some space to just consider this without,
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying, the shame and all the expectations and the guilt
Yes.
around it.
Yeah. Well, and I think the shame and the guilt and those expectations that we put on ourselves,
Yeah.
those block the spirit. And so when
So
we
good.
when we let go of those things, like that pressure that's released, then I think like that then we get to be filled
Yeah.
with the spirit.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I love that. That when we begin to start like getting rid of the shame and the guilt, then the spirit that enters in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are some of the experiences that your clients have had in working with you and just unpacking these these beliefs that that are that are not helping them to feel the spirit and to grow spiritually in the way they most desire?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes they'll bring something that like to a coaching session that seems really insignificant and small. But
Yeah.
as we just like kind of dig into things, and I don't have this goal of making my clients cry. That's not a goal. But sometimes that's just a thing that happens because you can be coaching on something like, why haven't I gone to get window coverings? And find this belief of like, I'm going to make the wrong choice. And then see that everywhere, right? Especially in gospel living. And when you get there, and it's a release, I think, like to let those emotions out and just to realize that. And so then there is just like this greater sense of peace and clarity and being able to then move forward, which I think is what we all want. We want to progress. We want, like, not just in this life,
Yeah.
but in eternity, right?
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we forget that it's okay if our progression here doesn't look the way we think it should. And that's actually maybe exactly how it should look.
Yeah.
We can
So then
start
instead of
breathing.
asking the question, what's the right decision? What's the question to ask then?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know if I really have an answer for that one.
I don't either.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking you. Not that I'm expecting you to have an answer, but it's a good question to ask, right? And to consider.
Yeah.
It's like and maybe it's how we even consider what the word right even means. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are like we know about the truths of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We know about the
Yeah.
doctrines. We know that Jesus Christ is the son of God and he came down to this earth and he came so that he can live, be an example, suffer, die and be resurrected. Like that is a true statement. That's a
Yeah.
true doctrine. And so if there are certain truths in our lives, then everything else, what I'm like, what I'm just wondering what it is that we're at that we need to ask that might be more sustainable on a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual level.
Yeah.
So
And
instead
I
of it's
think,
like right, if it's not right, then what is that?
yeah. Well, and I think that's maybe part of the reason why like neither of us have an answer is because it's maybe different for each person,
Yeah.
right? And so what I loved when I was first getting coached for myself and realizing my thoughts were creating my feelings,
Hmm.
my prayers shifted where it wasn't like help me to be happy or whatever. It would be
Yeah.
help me to recognize what I'm believing.
Oh, that's an interesting prayer. I've never thought
Yeah,
that.
because then he can show me this is what you're believing, right? And then so all of our tools we have like doing a thought download, right? Like writing down everything, going and getting coached,
Hmm.
like it's through kind of yourself or answering questions that others ask or you ask yourself that the Lord is able to show you what you're believing.
Yeah.
And so then once, and I think it's so important, right? When we admit what we're believing, we're okay with it. We naturally kind of take that step back, have the blinders off. And so then a new belief just really naturally comes in quite often. And so for me, I know that one of the things that I've realized isn't helpful for me
Hmm.
is good enough, right? Some like it's said in such a loving way, like it's okay that it's not perfect. This is good enough. But for me, good enough is perfect. If it's not perfect, it's not good enough. And so it doesn't work for me to give Jesus my good enough. And so what I stepped into, and this took courage for me to write down, was
Yeah.
what if Jesus wants my worst? I always have my worst to give to Jesus, and I have
Oh,
got my best at
that's
times, but I
so good.
always have my worst.
What?
Yeah,
That is so good.
I know. And then I get to give him so much more.
Yeah. It's here's the craft I tried. And it's like it's just all messed up. I'm like,
Right?
I used all the
Well,
glue like you told me, plus the glitter.
right, exactly like a kid, right? Like here's like this ugly mess that they're so proud of and they made it out of love. Here's my I didn't read my scriptures for a week. Here you go. Right? He's like, "Thank you. I love
Yes.
you." And then you can take
Yes.
that into bigger things, right? Like going through a separation and divorce. Does that feel like the biggest failure? I would imagine it does. I don't know for sure. I haven't experienced it.
Oh yeah, it can.
Yeah.
Totally. It's like, what did I do wrong and how did I mess it up and how is it all
Right?
my fault? Like that's the
Exactly.
narrative.
Exactly, right? And that's what I was kind of imagining because we do that for everything in our
Mhm.
lives. And so I'm like, that
Yep.
would just be like 100,000 times more for something
Yes.
so big, right?
Oh
They're
my
like, okay,
gosh.
I got married in the temple. I tried my best and it really, really didn't work. Here you go. He's like, okay, thank you. I'll take it.
Oh my goodness, that's so insightful. And as you were like, as we were talking about like being a little kid and we offer like this craft project, it reminded me of something that I heard. Where did I hear it? It may have been on a podcast episode, but um it was, oh, what is her name? It was Heather Rackham, and she was quoting another guest that she had on. And she likes to see her partnership with Christ and with her heavenly parents as just a project. So it's like we can even think of it as a craft project, right?
Okay.
And as I was kind of like thinking about this as you were talking, maybe instead of asking what's the right thing to do, it's like what's the next step,
Mm-hmm.
and
Or
so
even like, what can I do? What am I capable of doing right
yeah,
now?
what am I capable of doing? What is it that I can do that maybe I don't know yet?
Mm-hmm.
But if I just knew, then I could do that.
Right. And because even asking that, it can be really easy to again intellectually know, like, yes, I know that he's okay with whatever I can do next, but like still, if you're still believing, but I need to be up here at this level.
Yeah.
And so again, like recognize that, work through that, because when you can let that go,
Yeah.
okay, you had talked about like someone reading their scriptures for 2 hours a day, right? Like, okay, I can't do that. And so I remember like really recently, like I try to read my scriptures every day and I'm generally pretty good about it. Not for an hour though. And I remember one day like, oh, I don't really have the time that I want to sit down and really focus on my scripture reading and like being able to journal. But I guess since Jesus wants my worst, it's okay if I just go read a few verses right now and it's not super insightful and taking my time and energy. And so, like, on one hand, you can look at, like, oh, well, you're just being obedient because you're supposed to. I'm like, well, yeah, but because I want to,
Yeah.
and I can't do it as well as I want to, but Jesus will take my worst.
Yeah.
So, so I'll do something rather than doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, yeah, such an interesting conversation that we're having, that there are so many other questions that we could be asking ourselves versus what's the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yep.
and just asking him in different ways just seems to open up. It just seems to open up a dialogue and a conversation with him versus what's the right thing? Give it to me and then I leave. Like there's really like no, it's so
Right.
transactional versus conversational.
Yeah. Well, and as we're talking, like, and I have these ideas and you have these ideas. I'm like, and it's not even like I'm perfect at it.
Yeah.
Right? Which is funny because perfectionism, right? Here's how to not be perfect and be okay with it. And I'm not perfect at it.
Yeah,
I still expect it
totally.
of myself.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, and we don't have to beat ourselves up for that. But just
Yeah.
like you said, just being honest
Mm-hmm.
with yourself. And so what would you say that you have come to know about God in this process that maybe you didn't know beforehand?
I think my understanding of how truly loving and accepting he is of me is part of it, as well as how do I word this? His desire for me to trust myself. He has, I've learned he's got trust in me. I'm the one who doesn't have trust in me. And so I think he's teaching, and I'm very much in the learning process of this still,
Yeah.
but learning that I can trust me too. Of course, I trust Christ, and I need to remember to trust him at times too.
Yeah.
But I think more often, he's trying to teach me to trust myself.
Yeah. And what would you say that your clients may be learning about God that maybe they didn't realize?
that he is not the one withholding forgiveness from them. They are withholding forgiveness from them. And that he really truly is okay with whatever they have to offer and what they have offered.
Yeah, amen to that. I truly believe in that too. And yeah, like it's so true how loving he is
Mm-hmm.
and how gracious he is in whatever our offering would
Yeah.
be. I love that. And so one question that I just love to ask all my clients near the end of our conversation is what does it mean to lead with grace when it comes to living the gospel of Jesus Christ? How would you answer that?
Ooh, the first thing that kind of comes to mind is learning how to have grace for yourself, which, but what does that mean? Is recognizing, like, it could be things that you project onto others, whether it be family or children or whatever, that if you're expecting a certain level of performance or perfection from someone else, that it's because you're expecting that of yourself, and learning to love yourself enough and to love God enough to let go of that
Mm,
and accept yourself for where you are.
that's so beautiful. It's almost like an act of faith
Yes.
and a
I think
faith in
so.
your own divine worth.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. Thank you so much for just
Yeah.
um, sharing how you're bringing greater light to other women, especially women in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And where can listeners find you
Yeah.
and get to know
Yeah. So
more about your work?
my podcast is called LDS and Loving Life, because I
I
think
love
that
it. I
that's
love
kind
it.
of the plan, right? That's
Yes.
the hope. And so, like, and a lot of women really aren't finding joy in living the gospel, but
Yeah.
not because of the gospel. It's because of what we're doing to ourselves, right? So LDS and Loving Life. And then if people want to work with me, I can be found at www.youarelimitless.ca. And that's how they can.
So good.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. I will make sure that we have all of those links in the show notes so that my people can access your podcast, access you and book a call with you. And so that is
Absolutely.
so awesome.
Thank you. And
Thank
then
you
I
so
just want
much.
to also, because for my podcast
Oh,
listeners, let them know about what your podcast is called, and your women's group especially, and how to work with you.
yeah. So for your people, again, my name is Hyo North, and my podcast is called Leading with Grace. And I work with women going through separation and divorce, specifically LDS and faith-based women going through separation and divorce. And we work on something a little bit different than a lot of other coaches. And we work on the spiritual mastery and the discipleship part of going through a divorce, because you're going to have your person that's going to be over legal. You're going to have all your friends and family giving you all the advice. And I am here to help you to really to anchor you spiritually and get you grounded in Jesus Christ and in your heavenly parents as you navigate this difficult part in your life. And I'm able to do that because I've done it myself, and I've been able to experience profound, just profound spiritual enlightenment as I have gone through this. And I know this is going to sound crazy for your listeners, but seriously, the divorce was, well, actually, I'm not quite divorced yet. We're still separated, but it was like the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I would do it again. And I know that sounds nuts, but as I am just thinking on what everything that's happened to me on in regards to my relationship with my heavenly father and with my savior, it has been an amazing experience. And I know that I'm meant to share these results with so many other women. And so if as a listener, you are going through a separation and divorce, or you have been divorced and you're struggling, I invite you to my women's group called Women at the Well. It is a free spiritual support group. We meet every Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern. And I'll put all the links in my show notes and give Jordana my links as well. So I can't wait to meet all of you.
And I love that. I think that is so important because that would be, I can only imagine how hard that would be, and just having that support in Jesus Christ and then from others who understand to be that support here, I think is
Yeah.
so wonderful. Let me say so many more
Yeah.
times.
And it is because, we don't talk about gospel principles and spirituality in the context of divorce and
Mhm.
separation. And it is a different the principle itself is still the same and it's true, but to be able to see it from the lens of divorce and separation brings its own challenges. And I'm because I've walked that journey, I've walked across the bridge, I'm able to see that and to help my people navigate how to utilize the atonement of Jesus Christ and the principles of the gospel, to find clarity in what the next steps are in their journey. So it's not always fun, I have to say, but it is it's well worth the effort. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
that's
Thank you
it.
so much.
You're welcome. And thank you.
It was so fun.
I know. I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you, everyone, for jumping on here. And I know we both appreciate you listening to what we have to share to bring greater light and love and joy into your life as members of the Church of Jesus Christ and also believers of Christ. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.